This is the Fresh Ice Podcast.
Punches him while he's down. That's a mistake. The captain tempted to twist his head off like a bottle cap.
George Laraque and Ty Domi are going at one another. Laraque's hit him a couple of good left hooks.
Tries to split the defense and walk in. Nice move. Another nice move. He scores. What a goal. It doesn't get any better than this.
Here are your hosts, Brian Goralnik and John Gallo.
Oh yeah, Fresh Ice. We're back again with another episode right in your ears. Across the way again, as always, Mr. Gallo. And I'm Brian Goralnik, and we are doing our best to bring you all of the hockey news that you're looking for. You could find Fresh Ice on all of the social media platforms at Fresh Ice Pod. That's right, all one word. That's how we're found, and that's how you can hear us. If you want to share us, by all means, spread the word. People need to know what's going on in the NHL season. We're not even in season yet. We're already ripping and rolling, and we're going to get into some fantasy advice for today. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Really looking forward to talking some fantasy. I know it's really fantasy football season right now, but it's never too early to talk some fantasy hockey.
That's true. A lot of people having their fantasy football drafts, but you're right. As the winter comes along and the weather starts to change, the only thing on my mind is some hockey. Maybe some pond hockey, too. We're talking about how we might want to get out, try some pond hockey. Hey, before we get into the show, John, I got some things I want to mention real quick. Kind of like a what's going on with hockey type of deal. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of news in the last week.
There has, and certainly chime in, add to whatever you want to add to. First off, and probably should have mentioned this on our last show, congratulations to Bill Guerin. Now, this is a guy that I met. I actually have a photograph with Bill Guerin. I saw him out in Washington, Game 7. It's a great game. Penguins, Caps, Game 7 in the playoffs. Of course, my Penguins won. We went out and saw the bus, and they were driving away, and for some reason, I guess Bill was hanging around. He had, I don't know, family thing or whatever, but he was going to drive himself, and so he was waiting for an Uber or something, maybe take him to the airport or wherever he was going. But the point is, I stopped by and said, "Hey, Bill, great game." He says, "Thanks." I said, "Can I get a photo?" And so we get a photo, but my buddy was so excited to take the picture, right? He was shaking.
Oh,
so
no.
Bill Guerin looks like a ghost. I don't even know that Bill Guerin's standing next to me. Fortunately, I did get an autograph as well, and that's on my door, actually, to my bedroom room. So anyways, Bill Guerin is the Wild GM. So the Minnesota Wild have hired him to be the general manager. He is a great hockey mind. He had a great hockey career. And I think that's a good move by Minnesota, and certainly looking towards the future, he's got a good eye for talent and knows how to handle that as well, bring people together. So congratulations to Bill Guerin. A lot of different changes, coaching changes, guys getting named, former players getting named to be GMs. I mean, you look at Seattle, they had Ron Francis getting named their GM. So we're starting to see those guys that you and I grew up knowing and watching, John, and seeing them get their chance to be somewhere in the realms of not the coaching staff, but just the upper ranks of the hockey, and not playing on the ice, but overseeing it from off the ice. Also, how about this? Evgeny Kuznetsov.
Yeah.
Interesting
what a
story
crazy
here.
Story.
Right? So this is a guy who was in a video that was on social media, and cocaine was on the table. Now, he didn't partake in any of this, but he was sitting, and in front of him on the ottoman was a rolled up bill and, lines of what would presume to be cocaine. So just by association, he's kind of guilty. Now, the NHL hasn't done anything, but they're now looking into it a little bit more. They originally weren't going to do much or any looking into it, but all of a sudden the International Hockey Federation decided to say, hey, we're not okay with this. So they have banned a 4-year ban on Evgeny Kuznetsov, so he can't partake in any Olympic hockey, any international hockey, anything in that sense. But yet he's still okay by the NHL.
It was so weird because I remember, I believe it was this time last year when the video and the pictures surfaced.
Yes.
The NHL looked into it, determined that he was not involved. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. They didn't suspend him. Mm-hmm. Now we have a positive test for cocaine. It's very interesting to see what the NHL does, considering they knew about this and they did nothing about it because they didn't test him, or maybe they did and he passed the test. He didn't fail for cocaine.
Right.
But now, we're a year removed from this and it's resurfaced. They have to do something.
They have to.
I don't know, because in the last maybe 15 years, I don't think we've really seen this at all. Maybe a few times, but I don't know what to expect in terms of a suspension length. Is he going to be suspended the entire year? Is he going to get multiple years? Maybe he only gets 10 games.
I can't imagine multiple years. I think that would be a drastic overreaction.
I do too. But
I'm shocked with the 4-year ban from international play. I mean, I think that is a heavy penalty for a guy who's kind of in the prime of his career. You're thinking when he's able and eligible to play internationally or play in the Olympics for Team Russia, he's going to be more towards the end of his career. Not saying he's going to be done. He's not going to be retired before he can play again, but he's missing some of his most fruitful years as a player, and he can't compete internationally like that. And again, I think because they already made that decision, I think the NHL has to follow suit. They have to do something, and especially with the positive that came up, you're right. But even a year seems long to me.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking like 15 games. You think 80-game season, you're taking away 20 games, that's a fourth of the season. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the NHL is not going to be like, oh, it was only cocaine.
Yeah, no, you can't.
But, I mean,
there are other things that are worse, I feel like.
Right.
And it's his first offense on this as well.
You have to go by the CBA, and we know hockey has a tough CBA because of the lockouts. Then you have to look at your steroid testing and everything and say, what are we ringing guys up for when they get test positive for PEDs?
Right.
And I think you have to find somewhere around that where you're going to test them. But, I don't know if cocaine helps you in hockey. I really don't know if it's not like a performance enhancing drug.
No.
But it could be, just based on what cocaine does to you.
Yeah, it's a stimulant, so right, it could get you up and give you that energy you need. I mean, it's not the route I would take, but
right, a very dangerous route to be doing that.
Very dangerous route,
just
sure.
Smell some smelling salts like everyone else.
Yeah,
come on.
I mean, that's like the legal cocaine, right?
So I really don't know what to expect. I can't imagine anything less than 10 games.
I'm with you on that. I can't imagine anything less than 10 games either. But again, a season long, an entire season just feels really long to me.
So the reason I said an entire season is because of what happened last year, where he blatantly lied to the NHL when they brought him in to question him on this, on what happened. I think they're maybe have like a sour taste in their mouth now, saying like, you know what, this guy lied right to our face. And now we're going to find out from a different source of hockey that they're going to suspend him for 4 years. We have to act on that.
Yeah, that's
We're going to look horrible if we do nothing.
That's very true. You're right about that. Definitely with you on that. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. This is a new thing that hockey is going to have to handle here. It's definitely something that we haven't seen so far. So we'll see, and I'm sure Kuznetsov is going to kind of set a precedent. I'm hoping that this isn't something that is constant, is a reoccurring thing, not just for him, but for other stars. I don't know if I'd call Kuznetsov a star, but other good players in the league. I think he's a good player.
He was a big part of that Washington Capitals Stanley Cup team last year. I think if you lose him for an extended period of time of suspension, maybe it doesn't affect their overall distance, season record, but I don't think we'll see them in the Stanley Cup Finals without him, because he is a good player and he adds a lot to that team.
That's very well said. The other thing I wanted to bring up here too, and I'm having trouble getting back around to finding it. I'd seen a tweet that came out, and I believe it was Matt Zuccarello who sent the tweet out. Minnesota Wild's new Matt Zuccarello. And I thought it was something between Zuccarello and Zibanejad, who used to be teammates in New York. And the tweet read something along the lines of, and I believe the tweet was from Zuccarello. Maybe I should start by going to Zuccarello's Twitter first, but it was something along the lines of the fact that, why would he miss me or something? I've been carrying him on my back for the last X amount of years or whatever. Wow. It was brutal. I'm coming up short here because when I type in Zibanejad and Zuccarello, the only thing I get is here it is. Okay. Is the only thing I get when you Google them is how good of friends they were, right? So maybe this is a friendly jab.
I think it's
I don't know. But here's the tweet from Matt Zuccarello. He says, this is on the NHL 20 ratings reveal. He says, it's in capitals, it's crazy to me how Mika Zibanejad has a higher rating than me when I have been carrying him on my back the last 2 to 3 years. Life is unfair sometimes, I guess, at EA Sports.
He might be the first NHL player to speak up against their rating like they're in the NFL.
Like the Maddens,
yes.
Yeah, yep. I mean, I love it. I love the beef, and if they're friends, I think I love that even more. You know, if it's a subtle friendship shot. I don't know. I wish I knew the dynamic between these two players. From looking into it a little bit more, it almost looks like it's a friendly poke, but right off the rip, when you first read that, there's nothing friendly that's coming off about it. So maybe being on a different team in a different location, you know, feelings are starting to come out about how they really feel. And obviously, Matt Zuccarello certainly feels strong about the rating. I don't know about how he thinks about Zibanejad, though.
Well, maybe that could be our first must-watch game of the year is when the Minnesota Wild face the New York Rangers, and we see a little Zuccarello, Zibanejad. Maybe the gloves drop, and maybe it becomes not friendly anymore.
I would love to see that fight right there.
It would never happen. But.
I mean, that's like you know, two small guys going. That's two scorers going, like Taylor Hall dropping the gloves with Johnny Gaudreau. Like, I mean,
it's awesome. You have to see it.
That would be.
If you're a hockey player, you should be subject to drop the gloves at least one time in your career against someone your size. Even if you're a little guy, we have to see it. It has to happen.
I like that. I'm with that. The new rule entering the NHL.
I don't think it's
to have a fight.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
You cannot retire until you get into one fight.
I'm pretty sure, like one of our first episodes, we talked about why fighting is leaving the NHL and what they can do to not eliminate it completely. And I don't think they're going to take a rule that implicates more fighting.
Yeah, I think you're right. Unfortunately, it would be fun. It would be nice, but it's unrealistic. All right, so let's get into realistic talk, which means fantasy talk. We told you last week that this show is going to be all about fantasy breakdowns for this upcoming season. And again, don't change the dial because we want you to stick with us each week. The month of September will be Selectember.
I like that.
Selectember, yeah, that came out. I was thinking of it in my head. Came out smoother than I thought it would go. The point I'm making is we're going to make our picks division by division. We got 4 weeks and we got 4 divisions. Fortunately for hockey, they have to do it weird and have an uneven number of teams. Thank you, Seattle, for fixing that imbalance. I appreciate it. Anyway, so we'll make our picks on the divisions. We'll give you the breakdown. We'll start out west. We'll bring it home back east, and that is going to be all September long each Friday. For this show, fantasy rankings, and then of course that very first Friday in October, I believe it's October 4th, we will have Bob Joyce on talking college hockey. That's going to be an exciting show. I know we're in the hockey season at that point, so we're certainly to keep the NHL theme rolling, but certainly excited to find out what's going on in the college scene, especially since we record out of Hartford, and it's very close to UConn, which is some good hockey. So we'll talk to Bob Joyce on the 4th, right? Is that I got the right date on that? October 4th, rather?
Yes, I think we're going to be interviewing him early. We're going to hold on to it for a little while.
Yes.
You know, really get you guys antsy and waiting for it. And then right before UConn's hockey season opens up, we'll drop that. And it's going to be an awesome interview with Bob. He's so excited and so pumped up about this year's team. He's thinking really highly of them, as am I. Can't wait to talk to him and find out what he thinks.
Absolutely, and can't wait to find out how John likes to tease us a little bit more. He's like, right when you need to have it, we're gonna wait one more week and then we'll give it to you. That's John Gallo's method. I like it. I stand behind it. All right, so let's get into today's show, which we're gonna talk some fantasy rankings, go down some options here. Now, we told you last show that we're going to do a must buy. That's someone you gotta have. we're going to do a buyer's beware. And that might not be someone that's not going to end up on any roster, but that's someone who John and I think, hey, you might not want him on your roster because you're either going to overpay for him or he's going to end up being a bust. And then we have our hidden sale, our sleeper pick, who you're going to get some good value for, and he's going to deliver. Might not be league-leading performances. It's always hard to pick a sleeper who's going to lead the league. Typically, those guys are already known about. But, again, we're just looking for value in terms of a hockey draft. We're going to go down centers to wings, to defensemen, and then to the money pick, which is the goaltenders. Remember, a goalie wins you your fantasy hockey league. I had Jordy Binnington last year, so I can tell you that for a first-hand example. My only championship came when I had a Stanley Cup winning goalie on my roster. That's how it goes. All right, so John, let's we'll just dive right in. You want to get into maybe some centers that should be on people's radars, or that must-buy kind of center pick?
Yeah, let's get it going. I think for the buyers, this is going to be very obvious to a lot of people.
Yes.
If you're not picking these guys in the first round, you have no shot at winning. I'm just going to be completely honest about that.
Absolutely correct.
And with your first pick or your first round pick, if these guys are on the board, they're must-takes. That's, to me, Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, John Tavares. Right off the bat, those three are your top centers. If you don't have them on your team, it's going to be a struggle for you, especially if you're picking center first round.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with any of those. McKinnon, great. Tavares on a great Maple Leafs team, I think is getting better as well. So that's an obvious pick. And of course, there's Captain McDavid. I mean, he's one of the most, if not the most, supreme talent in the National Hockey League. Problem for him is he's on a bad team and he doesn't get to the playoffs. Anyway, so I'm with you, but let me throw a couple other names out here. Maybe not first round guys, but they're must-haves because I think that they're going to exceed where you would get them from. All right, so maybe a second round guy, but he's going to perform better than most of your first round picks. I like Malkin to have a bounce back year. I think people are a little low on Malkin. You might even see him fall in a couple leagues depending on how goalie heavy it is early on. Might even see him fall to the third round. I doubt that, but I would not be surprised to see him fall out of many first round picks. The guy didn't have a very good season last year. He is getting a little bit older, but his contract with Pittsburgh is coming to an end. I believe he only has a year or two left. So he's got to start kind of turning around his performance, figuring it out. So I think Malkin's going to have a bounce back year. Braden Point, I think, is another name. Even if you reached for him in the first round, I think he's going to deliver first round kind of numbers. Braden Point plays with Nikita Kucherov. He plays on a highly, highly talented Tampa Bay team. He is going to deliver just like he did last year, no doubt about it. And I think my biggest must-buy for the center's position, Tyler Seguin. Tyler Seguin's been a minute since my boy Seguin has been at the top of the league in terms of delivering for points, in terms of being a fantasy pick. And I think this year, Dallas has made a lot of noise in the offseason. They brought in a number of guys, bringing in Joe Pavelski, bringing in Corey Perry. I don't think any of these guys, I know Joe Pavelski is the center. I don't think that's going to take away from what Tyler Seguin's going to do. Because one, Seguin's spot, not in jeopardy. He's the first line center, no doubt about it. But this means now it's a more talented power play. It means now he's going to have some better matchups because you don't have to put all of your best players against the top line of Dallas and then not worry about the other three lines. It gives depth to Dallas that Seguin can actually take off and explode from there. So I think Tyler Seguin is an absolute must-buy this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't throw him on my list, but I didn't think he was going to be around very long. I think that's going to be an early pick. You should definitely try to get him. He's great.
How about a pick that you want to stay with? Again, these aren't guys that are not going to end up on a team. Chances are they'll land on a team because hockey pools tend to be a little bit deeper. But I certainly wouldn't want him on my team. I know you don't want him on your team, John. Who are we going to stay away from in this draft?
If we're sticking to the center position, there's one guy that, I know pretty well being a Boston Bruins fan, but I would stay away from him in fantasy, and that's David Backes. You don't know if he's going to be a Bruin during this year. They are trying to move his contract, but it's a big contract that he's not playing up to. He's playing third line, sometimes fourth line minutes, and he's not really giving you much production. I think that'd just be a waste of a roster spot.
I could see that. Yeah, I think that's a good person to stay away from, especially with the talent out there and the uncertainty of what his role is and where he's going to be. I got a couple guys actually you could stay away from. Anze Kopitar, I think he was a stay away from kind of guy. Even last year, I was down on him. I don't like anything in Los Angeles.
No.
Dustin Brown is the only fantasy relevant guy from that team, and that's because the man puts up hits and the man puts up penalty minutes as well. Anze Kopitar is a goal scorer who scores minimal goals, and he's not going to dish in a lot of assists. They're not a high scoring team, so I do not like Anze Kopitar. I don't like Ryan Getzlaf. I think Anaheim's going to be a worse team this year. I understand they got rid of Corey Perry, and that's them looking towards the future, but at the same time, that was Getzlaf's right-hand man. So he's kind of in a new territory where he is the guy, and I just don't know if that's going to allow him to flourish. Kevin Hayes signed a 7-year deal with Philadelphia this year. A lot of people know that name because of the size of the deal and because he's been from New York. He went to Winnipeg, was in the playoffs. He had a lot of exposure. He was a hot name around the trade deadline. So I think a lot of people know that name, which might prompt you to kind of reach a little bit early. This is a guy who scored 20 goals in his career just once and set a career high last year in points with 54 points. That's not a guy I'm taking anywhere inside the top 5 rounds. That is a guy that I'm staying well away from, especially in Philadelphia. He can get lost in the mix. There's a lot of talented players out in Philadelphia as well.
Yeah, but Philadelphia is also an aging team. I might even stay away from someone like Claude Giroux.
I wouldn't. I think Giroux is going to be just fine. I'm with you. His time is coming.
Right.
But I think what he's shown you in the last 2 years, having a resurgence to his career, I think he's shown you he's still got plenty left to him. And I do, with a better goalie, this Flyers roster is very good. And I think Claude Giroux knows that. This is going to be him trying to make one final push here for a Stanley Cup. If Carter Hart can be the goaltender that they're thinking he might be able to be for this team, I think Giroux is going to be just fine. I think Voracek's going to be just fine. I think the concern is there's a lot of mouths to feed. Don't forget, they got James Van Riemsdyk from last year from Toronto.
True.
So there's a lot of talented scoring options on this Flyers team, and I think Hayes gets lost in the mix and maybe finds a spot on the third line.
That's a fair point.
Another guy too, real quick, is Dzingel too. They bring him into Columbus. No, where did he
was traded to Columbus at the trade deadline last year, but I believe it was a rental.
It was a rental, and I'm sorry, Carolina. That's Ryan Dzingel is in Carolina now. So again, he puts himself maybe with a guy like a Sebastian Aho. There's some talent there, but he was surrounded by a whole lot more talent in Columbus, even in Ottawa when he was playing up there with Mark Stone and Matt Duchene. So, at that rate, I think, again, I don't think he's going to have a bad year. I don't think he's a guy, again, maybe that he's going to find a spot on a roster. But my point is, I think you might end up overpaying for him just because of his name. I don't think he's going to live up to where you would have to draft him. Which leads us to, what about guys you can get the value for? What about somebody that you can make up for a mistake, an early round blunder pick? There's a lot of names out there, including a guy like Matt Duchene. I think he's a really good value pick ending up in Nashville. There's a lot of talent on that first line in Nashville. He could have top 10 numbers out in Nashville. I'm not kidding. He could be a superstar, and he's probably, I don't know, what was he, like the 20th best center, something like that, ranked somewhere in the middle of the pack in terms of your number one centers. He could put up big numbers with the talent with Victor Arvidsson and Philip Forsberg out there. There's a lot of players in Nashville that he could thrive with. It just depends if he matches with them. Dylan Strome for Chicago. He kind of paired well with Patrick Kane when he came over from Arizona. Again, for where you can draft this guy, I think he's going to put up some good numbers. Here's one name for you, Dylan Larkin. That's a must-have. That's a must-have.
Absolutely.
He put up top center. I think he put up like top 12 center numbers last year. This is a guy that might, out of all your team's number one centers, might be in the same position as Duchene, but even further down the list, probably like 18th, something in that range. Dylan Larkin is the absolute man out in Detroit. And that whole first line, I would pick anybody from that first line. I have Mantha on my list. We'll get to him when I mention wingers. But, yeah, I like what Detroit has in that first line. I don't like the rest of the team, but that first line is a nice line. How about you? What do you got, some good value picks?
Well, to be fair, I do know a lot about the Bruins more so than most of the teams, so I'm kind of going biasly here.
Okay.
But one guy that's very overlooked. In fact, I just saw a tweet on him the other day saying why he's overrated and why the Bruins need to move on. David Krejci. First of all, he did have his career best year last year, and he didn't have a right wing consistently the entire year. This year, it's looking like there should be some more consistency there. They haven't named the second line right wing, but there's supposed to be more consistency. He's already built up great chemistry with Jake DeBrusk on the left wing. Once we get one of these younger guys in at the right wing, I think you could see another great year from David Krejci. He had 73 points last year, tied his career high. I think you get somewhere near 75 to 80 points from him this year.
Wow. Ooh, expanding that, setting a new career high at age 34. I like that, though. I actually really like that pick.
Well, you think about it, he played his entire career in Boston under Patrice Bergeron on that second line.
Yeah.
He's Bergeron, 34 years old as well. They kind of came up together.
They did.
And Bergeron is like a pro's pro. If you want to learn from anybody, you want to be under the wing of him. And I think Krejci has been alongside him so long that I think he's kind of doing the same thing where they're getting better with age.
That could very well be. And this is a guy who had a lot of talent even just coming in the league to begin with. So depending on who they put on that wing, because I like DeBrusk, but Krejci's not a goal scorer, as you know. He's a man who's going to set the play up.
But he can finish when he needs to.
He can. Oh, absolutely. He can. But I think his best attribute, his best asset is his vision and his passing.
Yeah, I mean, 53 assists last year.
Yeah. Oh, it
was a career high.
He's money in terms of delivering the puck. So if they can get another goal scorer on the other wing for him, absolutely. Even not, I still like that pick. I think that's a guy that you can get late in your draft and not have to pay a lot for. But like you said, even if he regresses a little bit, that's 65 points. That's a good season. That's a damn good season. Now, you're talking him versus a guy like Kevin Hayes, who I just mentioned. Hayes put up 54. That's his career high. I will guarantee you that Hayes will probably be off most people's draft boards before David Krejci will be.
Oh, absolutely, because people go for names and what line they play on.
Yep.
It doesn't matter to them whether or not these guys are good at playing on this line, but David Krejci is a second-line center that's going to give you first-line production most times.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Obviously, Draisaitl's a nice option. We didn't mention him, but playing alongside Connor McDavid, yeah, good things are going to happen for you and your stats. All right, so that was some centers out there. We're missing a bunch. I mean, Crosby. We never mentioned Crosby. Stamkos. Everybody knows that there's going to be a lot of guys out there who can be valued and put up good points. We're just trying to pick out a few here to help jumpstart your fantasy draft, because chances are you haven't drafted yet, and you could be like me and John up until not too long ago. We were still focused on football, not even looking into hockey. So, we had to do a little bit of research, but we're here for you, and this is what we're trying to do. Let's get into wings then. How about your must-buy wing? Who do you have to have on your team? Doesn't matter left or right. They could break that down. I just want to know from the wingers category, who's going to be that guy?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious who. He was the Hart Trophy candidate winner last year, and Nikita Kucherov. The dude is just awesome. I mean, we haven't seen a point production like that in I don't know how many years. And
will he match? Probably not.
No.
Is he going to fall off big time? No. He'll probably exceed 100 points again.
The scary thing is, he's 28 years old, 29 years old. Like, he's entering his prime right now, and he could up his production even more.
Nikita Kucherov is not as old as you think.
He's only 25, isn't he?
He's 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's really...
when you said 28, I'm like, yeah, and you're like 29. I'm like, I don't know if he's that old. And then, yeah, I was thinking 28 as well, so we were both a little over.
He plays like he's been in the league for 15 years.
He hasn't.
Exactly.
But he's very, very, very good. Problem for him, though, is he's got to deliver in the damn postseason. He just like many great players, there is a bigger fall off between what you do in the regular season and the postseason. I'm not saying he needs to have 13 or whatever points he put up last year pace in the postseason, but he does need to keep a similar pace. He does need to deliver, and he is yet to really do that, to be honest with you. You look at a lot of other these stars out in the game. Obviously, we haven't seen McDavid, but Ovechkin has produced. Crosby has produced. Malkin has produced. Kane has produced. A lot of these guys have produced. Even Austin Matthews, in his short sample size, has been able to somewhat produce. He hasn't been stellar, but he certainly hasn't been a no-show, where I think his Kucherov needs to up his ante there a little bit. How about you got any other names? Because that was obviously a no-brainer.
I do have another name. It's actually kind of more towards the sleeper side of this.
Okay.
Tom Wilson in Washington.
Okay.
He has really evolved his game into a very dynamic. He scores, he plays defense, and he gets you some penalty minutes, which
lots of penalty minutes.
Right, and which people don't think about with fantasy, but those add up and give you a lot of points.
And just so people who have never played fantasy hockey, it does confuse me a little bit, but the way penalty minutes work in fantasy hockey, it is a good thing.
Right.
You get a fight that's 5 minutes, as opposed to your opponent gets a tripping penalty that's 2 minutes. You win that category 5-2. It's a little bizarre because penalties in hockey are not a good thing, so you'd think the fewer the minutes, the winner, but that's not how it works. You're absolutely right. I had Tom Wilson on my team last year on my championship. Not only on my championship run, I had him all year long. Delivered big time. He had a breakout year last year in terms of scoring the puck. He plays on the power play unit with a guy like Alexander Ovechkin.
Yeah.
That's going to deliver a few PPPs. There's a lot to get from this guy, and like you said, penalty minutes, hits, if that's a category, not everybody does hits, even block shots. The guy is a gritty player in his own zone, but yet he delivers in the offensive side of things. And for where you could get him, he's not a top 3 or 4 round guy, but where you can get him, he could deliver and put up some good points for you. Taylor Hall.
Yes.
That's a must-buy for me. I understand that the Devils were a lottery pick. They were the number 1 overall pick, meaning they were the worst overall team last year. I think that is going to be a drastic flip, a flip-flop, if you will. I think they are going to be a very, very good team. They have now former number 1 overall pick in Nico Hischier, number 1 overall pick in Jack Hughes. I did a deck for John Hughes at my other job. Jack Hughes. Shout out to John. Jack Hughes. And now you're talking Taylor Hall to go along with it. And now PK Subban to go along with it. This Devils team is retooled. And I think they have the makings to be a very good team. They need to figure out who is going to be that guy in the crease.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Hall missed pretty much the entire season last year with a knee injury, and he's just getting back healthy. He's finally skating again. So he may be a little rusty to start the year, but I don't think you're going to see much in terms of lack of production from him.
No, and keep in mind, that knee issue becomes a point where he's going to fall a couple spots from where he would normally be taken if he was completely healthy. So an opportunity for you to maybe jump a little earlier than you want to, but I think he's going to deliver. Alexander Radulov, I think he's going to deliver. Again, I'm all in on the Stars. So anybody from that top Stars couple lines, whether you want to even throw the second line in there, I'm all in on the Stars. I think they're going to have one heck of a season. I think they're really, really talented and ready to make a cup run themselves, kind of like the St. Louis Blues did out west last year. Obviously, you mentioned Kucherov. Here's another guy. Now, this isn't a guy who's going to overwhelm you. The only reason he's more of a sleeper, but the only reason he's on my must-buy is because he's not going to be a great fantasy asset. He's just going to overwhelm you with the number of things he does. So Brady Tkachuk out in Ottawa, he makes my must-buy list because he is the only thing in Ottawa, meaning he is getting at least 20 minutes a game on the ice. He is getting at least 80% of the power play minutes. He is getting penalty kill minutes. He's getting all the time. He is the Dylan Larkin and the Anthony Mantha of a Detroit team. So your plus minus might take a hit from Brady Tkachuk, but you will get probably an average of like 5 to 8 shots a game. You will get all the power play time you desire for your heart to try to get some power play points, whether it's power play goals or assists. You're going to get some penalty time kill. You're going to get some regular season. He will deliver. Trust me. He is a talented player. He will put up probably, I would say, maybe 60 points this year. The plus minus is going to be ugly, but you're going to get a lot of other things going along with it, including probably some penalty minutes too. I mean, listen, this is a guy who, on a bad team, sometimes frustration wins out. You're going to take a stupid penalty. Well, that's 2 minutes in your pocket. So Brady Tkachuk is probably the worst player that makes my best buy list, but it's really just an oversaturation of what he could do for Ottawa. How about a guy we want to stay away from?
Milan Lucic over in Calgary just got traded.
Yeah.
And we talked about this
Staying
early.
away from
Yes,
him, huh?
I'm staying away from him.
Okay.
I just think he's getting up there in age and
He is.
trying to find a spot on a new team, trying to build that new chemistry. You know, when you've been there and you've done that. I just don't know how much production he's going to get when he's probably going to be getting third line minutes on a young team that's really on the rise. And we saw that last year, that they're a great team that made a run in the playoffs. I just don't see Lucic fitting their system right away. And with the third line minutes that he's likely going to get, I just don't see that production from a scoring standpoint.
Okay. See, I actually, before I get to any Beware guys, I really actually like Luch this year.
Really?
I'm kind of high on Lucic a lot more than James Neal. I don't think James Neal is going to deliver. I think his issue for Lucic was that he was always a guy that was valued on the team. He was always a leader, right? And so when you get to Edmonton, he's not the leader.
Right.
I mean, it's clearly Connor McDavid, and everybody falls in line behind that. And it just didn't feel like he had a fit. I mean, McDavid's style is not what Lucic is. See, I think in Calgary now, there's not really a leader. Yeah, Johnny Hockey is the leader. Yeah. You know, Sean Monahan's a leader. Sure.
Mark Giordano.
Giordano's a leader. You know, even Elias Lindholm is a leader. But nobody's who takes the cake out of that. Giordano because he won the Norris.
Well, he's a longtime captain.
But Johnny Gaudreau is the biggest face of the franchise.
Right.
You know, so there's not really a guy who's like, no, this is the guy. There's no head honcho. Luch now brings in, he's the only guy I believe on that roster who's won a Stanley Cup. At least one of the few. Or maybe one of the only guys who's won multiple. Point is, he brings in that veteran leadership. He's won a Stanley Cup. So when you talk about all the most talented guys, the Monahans, Gaudreaus, and Lindholms, they're going to be looking to Lucic like, hey, I want your advice. Because they've never even been to the Stanley Cup Finals, let alone won a cup, hoisted it. So he's going to be revalued. And also playing alongside a guy like Matt Tkachuk, who is a very similar style of game that Lucic plays, that gritty physical style, but delivers with goals and you know, can celebrate. I don't know. There could be some chemistry that vibes between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, there could, but I don't know, because I think there's, like you said, there's too many leaders on that team, and he thrives in a leadership role. I can't see him moving into a new locker room to an established young team and try to, you know, we always talk about, well, I mean, the whole world talks about how millennials kind of do their own thing.
True.
And now he's walking into a locker room primarily full of millennials and has to try to change them, even though he's the new guy. And while all this may not make any sense, or it may not matter at all, because it's fantasy hockey we're talking about, when it comes down to it, when he's on the ice, his numbers have really tanked in the last few years.
Yes, they have.
And maybe it's because he was in Edmonton, but I really do think it's because of his age and how long he's been playing and the style of hockey he plays. I just can't see him having much value to a team.
That's very fair. And real quick, it seemed like you might think the difference on James Neal. You might think that he might be a breakout candidate.
Well, I think he just has more skill. He's younger. I think he's got the style that Edmonton needs right now, because he's not as physical as Lucic, but he does have the better scoring attributes to him. And you throw him on probably the second line there, I don't even know who his line mates would be, because Edmonton's been so bad over the last few years. But I think he has to add some value to that offense, because they've really struggled the last maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets time with McDavid, you'd think that good things are bound
absolutely.
to happen. But again, Lucic had time with McDavid, and
it didn't really
pan out. So we'll have to see. Real quick, James Neal, 20 goals or no?
I think 18.
18? Hey, still viable asset. All right, here's a couple guys that I think you need to stay away from too. I think Artemi Panarin. Is going to have a good year, but I think, again, big name, big market, a lot of pressure. I think he's going to go high in a lot of rounds, and I don't think he's going to deliver on top-end type of points in what you're looking for in that production. Phil Kessel. Another name. I think he's going to have a worse year than he had in past years. He's trying to lead an Arizona team by himself, essentially. There's a few guys out in Arizona, but listen, you go from playing with Crosby and Malkin to Arizona, you're going to take a dip in production.
Absolutely.
Cam Atkinson, same kind of situation. He had a huge year last year, put up a ton of goals. But this is a Columbus team that now has lost their franchise goalie, has lost a few franchise players, 3 of them, 2 acquired ones, and also Artemi Panarin. So it's like they lost everybody. Now Cam Atkinson went from being that second line guy who's just scoring on top of scoring to being the guy who needs to score on top of score. And sometimes when you're asked to do that thing, it's a lot harder to do it against that top line defense.
Yeah, and he can't be really feeling too great because it went from Columbus having him, Bobrovsky, and Panarin, where they were going to build around the 3 of them, to now only having him and having to rebuild from scratch with just him. He's got to be feeling like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have re-signed when I did.
Yeah, and he's locked in. I mean, I think he's locked in for another 3-4 years to Columbus. So you might even see him turtle up and call it a career over in Columbus.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if around the trade deadline he's a name that gets floated around.
I'm sure.
It's a big contract, though, and not a lot of teams are going to want that, especially with this new cap.
Well, the only other player that he has left in there is Seth Jones out in Columbus.
Right.
So and maybe a Zach Werenski, but I mean, Seth Jones and him, I think both of those names are going to be floated around the trade deadline. Sebastian Aho, another name. I don't think he did big things last year. I just don't think Carolina is going to be as good as they were last year. So I think he dips a little bit. All right, so a couple guys that you can get some value for. I already said Anthony Mantha. I think Anthony Mantha is big with Larkin out there. What do you think about like a Jamie Benn or Corey Perry? Because I told you I'm high on the Stars too. I think from where you could draft these guys, especially Jamie Benn. Jamie Benn's not too far removed from leading the league or being close to leading the league in points. I mean, this guy was a scorer.
So Jamie Benn I would actually draft because of the style play he has. He's kind of like a Lucic, but younger and puts up more point production per year. Mm-hmm. Plus, he's on a line with Tyler Seguin, and those two have been together for the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah,
and they've been awesome. Like you said, Jamie Benn was the led the league in scoring not too long ago. Corey Perry, on the other hand, I think is at the very end of his career and just trying to have a resurgence. I don't know if it's going to happen with Dallas because he was on a pretty talented Anaheim team for a while.
But he had to be the guy, though.
But he did have to be the guy. And now I think he's been, he's had that mentality for a good majority of his career that he's the guy. And he's not the guy in Dallas.
No.
He may be on the third line as well. He may not be seeing top 6 minutes. Just because of how he's going to be stuck behind Matt Zuccarello, Jamie Benn.
Because Zuccarello obviously in Minnesota.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah, that's right. So he may be on the second line.
I think he would see second line minutes, but I'm with you. I mean, it is possible depending on what he was last year. Not going to make the second line there. Right. Not going to make it in Dallas.
And I think his game has really slowed up a lot. And I mean, not physically. He actually is much slower on the ice than he always was because he was one of the faster guys in the league. And I think with the new age hockey that we're in right now, where it's really fast paced and everyone is flying around the ice, I don't see him fitting well. I just don't see it. I think it's going to be a more repeat of last year.
I only mentioned Corey Perry just because you got to imagine he's going to see some power play minutes. You got to imagine he's going to deliver a better performance than he did last year. I'm a huge fan of when a player gets slighted, when he feels like he was offended, especially by a franchise that he gave a lot of his career to, his entire career in Corey Perry's case. Anaheim just said, all right, thanks for your services, be gone.
Yeah,
and
right.
He took it too hard. He actually came out and said, well, listen, I'm going to show him that I'm not done. There's still a lot of hockey left to me. So I like that kind of motivation. I think it really can get behind a guy and fuel him. So just a name to throw out there because you will see a guy like Corey Perry in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. You'll see him later in your draft. He's maybe worth that flyer. All right, so defensemen real quick as we fly through this. We spent a little too much time. But listen, the centers, that's your money maker. There's a lot of centers out there. Having 2 good centers on your team is the difference making between maybe winning and not winning. Also having a good goalie. But the guys on the blue line, they could really put up some points. We already mentioned him, PK Subban. I think he's going to have a nice year in New Jersey. Another guy who is on my must-buy list. Okay, I love Tyson Barrie.
I was just, Yep.
Love what the Maple Leafs did.
Yes.
Love him being acquired and brought in. And there's a lot of talent. Look at the year that Morgan Rielly had last year. I think Tyson Barrie is going to fill that role that Morgan Rielly. And again, no knock to Morgan Rielly. I just don't think Morgan Rielly is as good of a player as Tyson Barrie is. doesn't have the shot.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw that Tyson Barrie was going to Toronto, I went, well, that's it. Toronto just passed Boston in the standings.
That's what they needed.
And he's going to be a huge part of that. Because now they have, 4 defensemen that are solid, solid. They have a good top 4. In their bottom 2, they just have to play like a bottom 2, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, you have Morgan Rielly, who put up a career high in numbers last year. You have Tyson Barrie. You have Jake Muzzin, who they traded for last year. I mean, they still got a few other guys. Cody Ceci, I believe it is.
Yep.
He's kind of filling that 4th spot. But listen, even just with the top 3, that's really all you need. But I think the reason why he's on my buyer beware, I think Morgan Rielly takes a step back in points production this year. Tyson Barrie takes a large step up. Who do you got for must-haves, or was it just a Tyson Barrie?
No, they actually had one more, and it's Jacob Trouba and the Rangers.
Ooh.
He is the Rangers' defense right now.
That's a great point.
They have nobody else, and it's a young they're a rebuilding team that's going to look really good this year, may make the playoffs, but I think he's going to be the anchor of that defense.
I like that one. How about guys to stay away from?
I hate to say this, but my good guy, Zdeno Chara.
Oh, he's Ben. Stay away from him.
I know. But we haven't had a podcast the last 3 years.
That is true.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of getting up there in age. You're going to see a lot less minutes out of him this year, especially with how great the young defenseman played for the Bruins last year.
Yeah, McAvoy's a nice addition. He's only going to get more minutes as long as he could stay healthy. By the way, throw that guy to must-buy is Torrey Krug.
Yes.
Just because he's going to get those minutes that Chara used to absorb. How about Mark Giordano? Because of what he did last year, I think where people are going to draft him, I wouldn't go that high for that guy. I do think that Mark had a career year, and I think that will be his staple of a career year. That's the highest mark he can reach, I think, and I definitely think he's going to dip. I think Calgary is actually going to be a better team. Well, they're not better regular season, but I think they're going to be a more formidable team, especially into the playoffs, but I just don't think he's going to have to put up the points that he did last year. It was like 80-something, 70-something points. It was ridiculous. I think it was like 80 assists.
Now, the one guy I think on defense that everyone should have that I think is going to get overlooked only because he is technically still a rookie, Cale Makar in Colorado.
Now, he's on your must-have or your sleeper?
I think he's my sleeper. Just
That's on my sleeper as well.
Because he's a second-year guy.
Yep.
Technically, he made his debut in the playoffs.
Looked phenomenal.
He did, and they moved Tyson Barrie and gave him that spot, and he's going to be taken over as the number 1 on that defense.
That's exactly why they moved Tyson Barrie out, because they said, hey, we have Cale Makar. Why are we keeping all these talented defensemen? Because they got a few guys out there in Colorado, and so they're like, let's improve our depth in terms of our scoring. So they get a guy like Nazem Kadri, which I think is a great pickup. They ship out a guy and pretty much transition in a younger guy to fill that Tyson Barrie void. I think Cale Makar is going to have a great year. I think Sergachev too, Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa Bay. I know Victor Hedman is the guy out in Tampa Bay, always looking at as a potential Norris Trophy winner.
Yep.
Hedman's only 28. I don't think he's going to necessarily decline, but I think Sergachev is really a talented defenseman. He's young. He's been on the up and up. Remember, this is a guy who started at 18 years old. So the more he learns the league, the more he understands the game and how it's played in the NHL, because a Russian guy, the better he's going to be. And I think that this year he's going to have a bigger breakout year for sure.
Absolutely. Why don't we move over to goalies? And I want to hear right away. I want to see if you're trying to get Binnington right away.
No.
When are you drafting your goalie?
Well, Binnington, fortunately for me, I'm keeping.
Oh, okay.
Because in my league, he was a free agent back, when the Blues were trash, and I picked him up, and that means I get to keep him now for a 14th round draft pick, which is extreme value. Extreme value. By the way, I picked up David Rittich as well. Also a free agent keeper, also a 14th round pick. Since I only have one 14th round pick, I get Rittich and Binnington for a 13th and 14th. That affects me directly. How about what's affecting you? I don't like Binnington as a must-buy.
Okay.
This is a rookie goaltender who's coming back for a sophomore year, who just won the Stanley Cup, who's going to be looked at as like a Dominik Hasek, as like a Henrik Lundqvist, as one of those premier names in the NHL, and yet he hasn't done it yet. This is a guy like Matt Murray. Well, yeah, he's won the Cup and he won it early in his career, but where's Matt Murray at this moment? He's certainly not on my must-buy list, and he's not on my sleeper list. He's trending towards my stay-away-from list. If the Penguins weren't so talented, I think Matt Murray would be a stay-away-from kind of guy. And that just shows you that winning a cup early, it might not be a good thing. It might not mean anything. But the point is, for where you want to get that guy, I don't think he's worth it. I think he's going to be just fine. I don't think the Blues are going to be as good as they were last year. That's part of my struggle.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I probably would stay away from him just because of what he did to the Bruins. I have a personal vendetta against this guy. In other words,
I think he's a real deal.
No,
I do.
I think you're absolutely right though with the sophomore slump, and I'm just because it's not like he's going to actually slump. It's just the pressure that's going to be put on him. It's going to be way too much because we know St. Louis is most likely not going back to the Stanley Cup Finals again.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they have the roster. They got rid of Patty Maroon. I don't even think they had. I think it was just a good run by the right fit squad. I don't think they were the most talented team in the NHL by any means. I think they just rode a hot hand in Jordan Binnington, and they had the right fit squad. But I mean, I'm looking right now. NHL Network believes that Jordan Binnington is a top 10 goalie in the league.
It's so hard to say that.
I mean, he's on the fringe, if anything, for me. I definitely do not think he is an easy walk him in top 10 goalie. I mean, if you look at some of the goalies out there who I have on my list here, let's start with that. Vasilevsky, that's a must-have. You must have Andrei Vasilevsky if you could get your hands on him. How about a Ben Bishop? Again, I do like the Stars this year, but you're talking about the guy who had the best goals against average in the National Hockey League last year outside of Jordan Binnington, who didn't qualify because he didn't play enough games. So Ben Bishop, I think he will follow suit again this year and have a phenomenal year. Keep in mind, if you do get Ben Bishop, you'll want to get maybe his backup just as a handcuff. Bishop seems to get injured for a period of time throughout every year. And then also, I like Freddie Anderson because I think Toronto is only going to get better this year. And Freddie Anderson, while he's not going to give you the best stats in terms of goals against average and save percentage, he's not bad. He'll put up a number of shutouts, and he's going to get a ton of wins because he is the guy in the blue paint for the blue team in the Maple Leafs.
This year, I really like Ken Henrik. I think he's going to bounce back this year. And I'm not saying he had a bad year last year, but I think the moves the Rangers made in the offseason really sparked maybe a comeback season for the whole team in general. And I kind of like him going into this season as maybe the Rangers make the playoffs and maybe make a run. I don't think they're going to get very far. I think they maybe win the first round, but I do have them probably in the playoffs at this point in time, and I think he's going to have a really good year.
I like that name. Also, a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, I think he's going to be just fine. I think Vegas has a good squad. Braden Holtby, of course, is there. Tuukka Rask, I think, of course, is there. So there's a lot of names out there that you could throw out there. How about guys that you don't want?
Thomas Greiss and the Islanders, they lost Robin Leonard. Those two split time last year, won the Masterton Trophy for least goals, and I think a lot of that had to do with Barry Trotz. But I don't like Thomas Greiss as the one guy as your starter.
Well, they brought in Semyon Varlamov too, so I have him on my buyers beware. So let's couple the both of them in.
Yeah, I did
Greiss
write down
Varlamov.
for my sleepers for my stay away for every position. I just wrote Islanders.
That's not a bad thought because again they have to repeat that kind of defensive performance to be relevant. I don't see it happening.
It's so hard to do that,
especially in a retooled Metropolitan division. Right. Really tough division. We'll get into that in a couple of weeks. How about a Martin Jones?
I'm kind of on the more of staying away from him. I would take him on my team. He wouldn't be my starting goalie.
He wouldn't be my first round pick.
No, but he can add some value. But he's one of those streaky guys where he may win 10 games in a row and have like a 1.3 goals against average or whatever. But when he hits his lows, he hits his lows.
They're bad. They're brutal.
Really bad.
I had him on my team last year, and it was brutal. In fact, he became my third best goalie outside of Rittich and Binnington because of the fact that, he won like 30 games for me last year. But he would win games 8-5.
Right.
I mean, you can't do that for fantasy. It gets you that W, but you just trashed your goals against average. You trashed your save percentage. It doesn't work that way. And I actually, maybe it's just the pads talking, but something tells me that Aaron Dell might be in line for stealing some games from Martin Jones because I don't know if you saw Aaron Dell's new pads.
I haven't.
Oh my goodness. Look those up. I don't even want to continue to show until you look at. They are sexy. they're all black, and then they have that teal that they use in the San Jose uniform, and it kind of like outline. Yeah, and then when you put them together, it's sexy.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the pads talking to me, but I don't know. I like me some Arundel. But the point is just Martin Jones, he doesn't have, I don't think he has his head behind him. I think he's just a benefactor of a really good team in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a team that's going to get worse without Joe Pavelski leading the ship. Sleepers, as we wrap up our fantasy discussion here, I'm going to throw out Rittich. I think David Rittich is a guy who's getting overlooked. Now, I'm looking on CBS hockey. That's what my fantasy league's on. Rittich is the 4th-ranked goalie. But I'm hearing that they're talking high raves about Cam Talbot having a resurgent year. So I don't know what to believe. I don't know if CBS has it pinned the way I have it pinned. But to me, David Rittich is the guy in Calgary. And I think Calgary is only on the up and up. I think they're a team that's getting better and better every single year. And I think whoever finds to be the starting goaltender in that blue paint, I think they're going to be a quality goalie. Again, at least at the very least, a Martin Jones as goalie, where you get a lot of wins, maybe not the best goals against average and save percentage, but I think Rittich is going to deliver. I also kind of like Bobrovsky. He's a name that might get forgotten about a little bit going to Florida, but Florida's got some players, man. They watch out for Vinny Trocheck. That's another center that maybe I could have thrown out in a sleeper. I mean, Barkov, Huberdeau, they got names across the board. They could be a talented team. They could be this year's Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Bobrovsky is my sleeper pick as well, just because of he's going to a new place with some new guys, and he's been great. I personally have overlooked him for the last few years, but he's been great. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has 2 Vezinas in the last 10 years?
2 Vezinas, yeah.
He just led Columbus on a really good streak last year. And I like that he's going to be playing with Roberto Luongo for his final year. I think that's awesome. I really do like Bobrovsky in Florida this year.
The other guy I really like, this is going to be a name, and this is the definition of a sleeper. This is who I'm going to end it with, and if you have another couple names or something, you're good. Okay, here's who we're going to end this with. Remember this name, because you can get him probably with the very last overall pick of your draft, Mackenzie Blackwood.
Okay.
He is, at the moment, the backup guy to Corey Schneider. Corey Schneider has been riddled with injuries throughout the last couple years. Riddled with injuries. I mean, he has not been able to stay healthy, and when he has stayed healthy, he hasn't been very good. Mackenzie Blackwood came up. He was a rookie last year. I don't know if he played enough games to qualify and actually had that as his rookie year. I do believe he might have, because he came up a lot towards the end. He was very good in a limited sample size for the league's worst team. Remember, the Devils, they had the number 1 overall pick because they had the worst record ahead of them. He came up last year, played 23 games, started in 21 games. He went 10-10 with a 2.61 goals against average. Now, it doesn't sound like overwhelming stats, but when you're talking about a team that's well under 500 and was averaging maybe 4, 5, 6 goals a game, for him to keep it under 3 goals a game and have a 10-10 record, he was tremendous. He's 22 years old, and he is the heir apparent to that crease in New Jersey, which I think is an up-and-coming team. It just matters how long Corey Schneider can hold them off for. Now, I'm not kidding. Corey Schneider's a good goalie. He had a great pass, and it's very possible Schneider has a resurgent year this year and kind of fends off Blackwood one more year. If it's not this year, it's next year. Folks, remember the name Mackenzie Blackwood. He's your next Jordan Binnington.
I actually do have another name to add that I thought about when you were talking about him.
Okay.
Someone that stepped into last year who is looked at as the savior of this franchise in terms of goalie.
Okay.
And that's Carter Hart in Philadelphia.
Yeah. We mentioned below earlier in the show. Absolutely.
Yes. 16-13 last year with a 917 save percentage and a 283 goals against average on a really pretty bad team last year. They surged towards the end. Actually, they surged when they inserted him in goal. I like Philadelphia this year to be a little better than they were last year, and I think most of it has to do with Carter Hart.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. You know what? Absolutely right, because Carter Hart is going to be a guy just like a Mackenzie Blackwood, just like a a couple, well, not really like an Aaron Dell, but maybe not nearly what Aaron Dell is. I would stay away from Aaron Dell. I wasn't throwing him out as a sleeper. If anybody's going to take over Martin Jones, it's going to be Dell. But
yes.
No, Carter Hart is the guy. So that's the difference between him and Black. If you have the option, if you're in a draft and you have the option of Carter Hart and Mackenzie Blackwood on the board, take Hart. Take Hart all day long, because Hart's going to he's the number one guy right now in Philadelphia. Blackwood's still got to get behind Schneider and work his way there. I was throwing out that deep sleeper because eventually the reins are his. But no, Carter Hart is a great name to throw out there, because out of the top 15 goalies, and I think he is a top 15 goalie, he's more looked at like a top 20 maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely forgot about him when I was going through trying to pick some sleepers. I was like, oh man, Carter Hart, where's he been?
Yeah, Carter Hart was just a big name. They were excited for him to come in. Here's one more for you. Carey Price.
See, I wasn't even looking at him as a sleeper. I think he's more of your must-have guys. But
here's my thing. When you think of top 5 goalies, you used to think of Carey Price. Do you anymore?
Well, only because of the team he's on.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I don't know if a lot of people are high on Montreal.
I don't know. They were kind of a surprise team last year. They started off so well. They kind of, fizzled out at the end. But he was also hurt last year for a lot of the time.
He was. Carter Hart got hurt a little bit too.
Yes.
You want to make sure that he stays healthy. One more name. All right, we could go on goalies all night. How about my boy UC Soros? He's the backup to Pekka Rinne in Nashville.
Okay.
Just again, a good name behind an aging goaltender.
Yep.
Suarez in minimal time has actually done pretty well. So maybe this is the year of looking at that next guy up, the young goaltender who's going to take over. Maybe Binnington started it last year. I mean, maybe that's the trend in the NHL.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young guys who might be able to step in and fill that position, fill that void for where the old guy's leaving off. And there's a lot of old goaltenders. I mean, Henrik Lundqvist. We got to start looking at the backup in New York. You're looking. I already mentioned Nashville. There's a lot of guys across the board. Marc-Andre Fleury getting up there in age. I'm not saying that Malcolm Subban is going to be the guy there, but there's a lot of areas where some younger guys can come up. So goalies are a place I think you can make a few steals, but you certainly want those few guys that we named at the top of the list there as your number one picks, because a goalie will win you your fantasy league. John, good luck in your. Are you drafting any fantasy teams?
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm definitely.
Yeah, well then good luck to your team.
Thank you, sir. I'll definitely bring you in on. Maybe I'll have you as a co-commish.
Hey, I'm down.
Co-commissioner. Listen, that'd be a good team that you'd be arriving to. That would be a championship-winning team that you're joining the staff on there. But listen, fantasy, to all of you guys out there, have fun, enjoy it. That's what fantasy is for.
Yep.
It's for fun. If you're betting, use some of our advice, because John and I both watch a lot of hockey, so we know what we're talking about. If you have any questions, want to know anything that we didn't talk about, just email us. Shoot us an email at freshicepod@gmail.com.
Yep.
Tweet at John, J_Gallo26. I'm at Brian Goralnik. If you figure out how to spell it, then I'll figure out how to give you an answer. Point is, we can be reached, or just even tweet the show at freshicepod. Again, for John Gallo, I'm Brian Goralnik. We really appreciate you listening to another episode of Fresh Ice. Stay tuned, because upcoming in the month of Selectember, we're going to give you our picks for division winners all the way through the Stanley Cups. This has been another episode of Fresh Ice.
Talk to you next week.